Casting our vote is our constitutional right and every vote are counted. But as the citizen of the country, do we all know about all nitty-gritties of voting system? Do we know how does the election take place? Do we know how are the votes count? What are VVPATs, on which several petitions have been filed to Supreme Court? To know more about the matters that matter, today we have with us Malika Roy Chaudhary, Head of the Department History of Sister Nivedita University. Hello and welcome to the SNE Chronicle. Hello ma'am. How do you see the voting system as truly gender?
The moment we reached the pinnacle of independence, and by 1950 India becomes a republic, which means that we choose our own representatives in the legislature and the executive directly. We had the first elections in 1951, 1952, right? So since then there has been not a paradigm shift in the way we vote. At the most, we've just changed the minutiae. Instead of paper ballots, we've moved to EVMs. More number of constituencies have been blended into the Indian electoral system. But the idea of free and fair elections remains in the tacit understanding that these have to be verified, these have to be corruption free, and these have to be in some way a marker of the democratic spirit of our country. We cannot have a democracy unless democracy is accounted for. Yes?
Yes ma'am. And ma'am, the 17th Lok Sabha election is a testament of the strength of Indian democracy. As for this past 17 times we have elected governments and every government has provided us a strong leadership. What do you think of it?
So sweetie, what you're basically implying is there's been a chasm or there's been a gap between promises and deliverance of those promises. In fact, I would also like to qualify your question that have all the 17 governments that have been formed so far been strong? In fact, we've had no confidence motions passed at least thrice in our democratic history. Yes, 1996 no trust motion was passed against the BJP. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister then. And it's a very evocative speech that you can still see on YouTube, where he's saying that I accept that I've not got Janmat. I accept that yes, there has been a no trust motion passed against my government in the Lok Sabha. Soon after, in 1999, we had another no trust motion. Yes, and we were at the risk of again having a no confidence motion in the early 2000s with the Indo-US nuke deal. Yes, so. And let me remind you that after the emergency, perhaps one of the most blemished chapters of Indian democratic history, we did have the Janata Dal. Yes, we did have Jaiprakash Narayan come up, but that government also did not last too long. Soon after, we again had to re-elect Mrs. Indira Gandhi in the next assembly elections, and she came back. So this is also a marker of a very active public spirit, that once we vote someone to power, it doesn't mean that they can just be assured of remaining on the seat for the next 4 years. We've got a very active policy of checks and balances, as it should be, with separation of powers between the executive, legislature and the judiciary. However, very recently in the 2023 report from the democratic indices, India has been called partly free, and there's a risk of India being labelled as a defective democracy. Now, defective democracy can be of multiple kinds. One of the problems that India is facing now is of delegative democracy. What is delegative democracy? That we have a very strong executive which is controlling the other two wings of the polity, which is judiciary and legislature. So the executive is actually going to paralyze and cut off the wings of the judiciary and legislature. What checks and balances can we have? We do not want a draconian form of government. We do not want a despotic government, and we certainly don't want an autocratic, monarchical or a dynastic government. So while I understand that we've conducted 17 very successful elections. It's never been that we've not conducted election every 4 years. Yes, we have had elections, unlike Russia and China. But at the same time, we are also at the risk of becoming a defective democracy.
It was a session full of learning and excitement. We'll be back with another episode with insightful updates. Here, on the SNU Chronicle, refreshingly different.